Marching for freedom, thousands of India's Dalits protest against the caste system. They complain of oppression and marginalisation. Just how deep-rooted is the caste system in Indian society? And how can Dalits' lives be improved? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Sami Zeidan. Well, Monday marks 69 years of Indian independence, but millions of Indian citizens say they're not free. 4 so-called lower caste men in the state of Gujarat were stripped and flogged for doing what many say was simply their job. In response, hundreds of people began a protest. They've walked 350 kilometres in 10 days, ending in the town where the men were beaten. Well, the protesters say the issue is bigger than just those 4 men, that members of the Dalit caste face discrimination in every facet of life, and that the Indian government ignores their calls for reform. We'll get to our guests in just a moment, but first, Karen Malone has this report.
They've endured decades of discrimination, injustice and violence. And with this protest, hundreds of Dalits are making it clear they've had enough. People marched for 10 days across Gujarat state to Una city, arriving on India's 70th Independence Day. Leaders of the Dalit movement are calling on their country's leaders to better protect them and give them equal opportunities.
Here in Una, our leader Janesh has appealed to Dalits across the world to launch a movement for land rights, labour rights, unity and equality, for which youths and women will need to take the lead. If we will fight for our rights, we will win. There is no doubt about it.
Dalit is a collective term for lower caste in India that they use to describe themselves. They used to be called the Untouchables. They're usually employed in menial jobs such as waste disposal or street cleaning, despite often being well educated. They've been subjected to an increasing number of physical attacks. Women have been raped and men have been publicly flogged. According to activists, there were at least 600 severe attacks on Dalits in Rajasthan state over the last year. Cows are revered in India and eating beef is not allowed. But vigilante groups have been attacking Dalits for supposedly killing cows and trading their parts, even though there's no proof or judicial process. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke out against violence in his Independence Day speech. He's condemned the attacks on Dalits before. But he's not turned those words into action, and they're still being treated badly. Human rights activists say the system is not on their side.
The police is complicit. The police does not act. These people bring in television crews, the police accompany them, but they would not stop them as they are filmed flogging and beating up and sometimes killing Dalits. So there is this impunity which must end.
The situation has got so bad that some Dalits have committed suicide to draw attention to their cause. Rohit Vemula, a PhD candidate at Hyderabad University, killed himself in January. His mother Radhika was part of the rally. Dalits have had enough of mourning the people they've lost and are demanding a better life, free from violence and oppression. Caroline Malone, Al Jazeera.
Well, the issue affects a large percentage of the Indian population. There are an estimated 160 million Dalits living in India. That's about a sixth of the country. For generations, they were known as untouchables and considered to be the lowest-ranking people in the Hindu caste system. The 3,000-year-old system divides Indian society into thousands of groups, and it has historically been a defining factor when it came to jobs and educational opportunities. The Indian constitution has banned caste discrimination since 1949. It includes quotas for government jobs and schools to level the playing field. But lower castes say they still face discrimination and attacks regularly. Let's bring in our guest to the show now. We have joining us from New Delhi, Vivek Kumar, sociologist and professor at Jawaharlal Nehru University. In Leicester, Gurharpal Singh, professor in interreligious relations and development at SOAS University of London. And in London, Satpal Moman, chair of Caste Watch UK. Welcome to you all. If I could start with Gurharpal. Has this incident in Una, has it launched a revolution, can we use that word, against the caste system? Is that what we're seeing going on in India right now?
Well, it's perhaps a bit premature at this stage to say a revolution is coming. But what has been happening in the last year and a half or so is the rise of atrocities against Dalits and scheduled castes in particular. And I think this may be a turning point in the current government, because it came to power ostensibly trying to win over backward castes and some of the Dalits into its fold in order to secure its position against the Congress in 2014 elections. But what has been happening is a wave of anti-Dalit violence, one instant after another. So I think this might be the spark that could potentially light a fire in the future.
It's certainly lighting something. Satpal, what is it lighting right now? How coordinated a movement is this? We hear about individuals, getting up and walking and deciding to join this protest march. Is there more to it than simply individuals?
No, this is not an individual action. This matter of the Dalit communities facing caste violence goes back thousands of years. So this has been brewing for a very long time. And in the modern world, as people get educated and they become more aware of their rights, so they are now exercising their rights. And these exercising of the rights are on not only a national scale but also international scale, because you have
but I'm talking,
sorry,
Satpal, but I'm talking specifically about the protest movement that's emerging. Are we seeing some kind of coordinated leadership? Who's giving the orders?
I think people are self-inspired. There's no single leader because people are inspired individually and at organizational level across the globe. So people are taking steps to rise up. And there's no single leader. You can't point to a particular leader, but leaders are developed regionally. For instance, we have leadership in the UK. Under Caste UK, we address issues of caste discrimination. So it is like a grassroots level movement. There's no single leader, but there's a grassroots level movement which is occurring. And self-inspired, inspired by the teachings of Dr. Ambedkar, who was a Dalit icon, who fought for the rights of the Dalits. So this is a globally inspired movement at grassroots level. There's no single leader to be identified here.
All right, so grassroots but without a leader. Vivek, can it go far?
Yeah, actually, I think, there's a little bit of correction because, these movements are always there. And it started with Rohit Vemula in Hyderabad, the PhD students who committed suicide. So that was there, and then the grassroots people who came there independently organized. But you see, it was fizzling down and there was nobody to take up. Then this Una case also emerged, and the people were not at all listening. The social sites, I will say Facebooks and others, these people, Dalits, who started discussing, and that galvanized the Indian media. And then of all, Mayawati, the Dalit leader from North India, Uttar Pradesh, she took up the issue in the parliament, and that was the upper house of the parliament, Raj Sabha. And when actually the other leaders saw that she is going to hog the limelight, she will take up all the credit. The leaders from different political parties started and going to Una. So that way it came to the national agenda. Now at the present moment, when we see the long walk towards Una, 350 kilometers, there is not a single leader. But there are individuals from different political parties who have come, and they are leading the movement. And therefore, I have a fear, unless and until a political party which is credible enough to give the leadership, this movement is not going to last long and it may fizzle out.
Oh, right. That's a worrying scenario, led perhaps or motivated by Facebook. I come back to the point, though, perhaps, Satpal, you can shed a bit of light on this. Are economic inequalities also driving the desire for change, not just Facebook and perhaps politicians trying to cash in on this? I mean, Dalits make up 16% of the Indian population, but they control, we're told, only something like around 5% of the country's resources.
Well, Dalits have continued to face economic and social exploitation, and most of the Dalits live in rural countryside, and therefore they are particularly victimized. Their women are raped, and violence occurs on them. And you get daily reports coming out of India, and this has been going on for since independence. And what has happened now is under the BJP, the Hindutva forces have emboldened themselves, and they're spreading the Hindutva ideology under the pretext, particularly of this cow protection, and using the cow protection as a pretext to enlarge their power base by attacking the Dalit communities. And this is happening across the country, and only rare cases like the case in Una will get highlighted, which is pretty gruesome. But there are rapes and atrocities committed on the Dalits daily, and they're, as I said, they're economically exploited, socially exploited. And what needs to happen is the government needs to take notice and do something for the protection of the Dalits. And one of the things they can do, according to the Atrocities Act, they can house them, to rehouse them, give them land, and especially when Dalits move into the urban areas, they need to be provided with housing units, because that's where most of the sexual and economic exploitations happen. And they've got no recourse for development. And Modi parades himself as a Prime Minister of India, following the development agenda. Well, the question is, development for who? You see, he's very closely allied with the corporate sector, like the Ambanis and the Adanis. He flies around the globe in an aeroplane and belonging to the Ambani. And he's got very close links with the corporate sector. And when he's talking about development, he's talking about the development of the corporate sector.
Right, he needs to think about perhaps some of the other castes as well. All right. All right, perhaps we'll take it now to Vivek. I mean, to what extent, you said that this is really a leaderless movement. You're worried it might fizzle out. What is it that, at this point, I mean, does the movement have any coordinated demands? What is it that those protesting want? What sort of change do they want to see?
No, there is an immediate demand as far as Gujarat is concerned. Dalits, they are demanding, because even in Una there are 52 families and only 2 may be having land. So there is landlessness all about. The people there, the manual scavengers have not been paid properly. They are not even given minimum wages. But what at the national level, there is a process of alienation which Dalits are facing, and ex-untouchables, as we say. 180 million people, they are not having their self-representation as far as the national level is concerned. Whether it is judiciary, whether it is bureaucracy, whether it is polity, whether it is industry, university, or civil society, NGOs, or media. You don't need a very in-depth analysis. Just see the composition of these 7 modern institutions which go into the making of a nation. Judiciary, bureaucracy, polity, university, industry. There is no representation as far as Dalits are concerned. 1 or 2 may be represented here and there, and therefore Dalits are not able to go and lodge any complaint to anyone at the highest level.
Okay, but hang on. Let me jump in here.
And that's alienation is.
Let me jump in here, Satpal. Let me bring in Gurharpal into the discussion. The Gujarat government, for example, does have policies to advance what they call the scheduled castes into higher positions. I mean, with some government supposedly proactive policies and action, why do Dalits still continue to suffer? I mean, what is going wrong at the policy level?
I think there are a number of issues here which need to be addressed. Firstly, going back to an earlier point about this movement, I think we do need to recognize that Dalits are not politically voiceless. There are a number of regional governments in Dalit regional governments in India, and Dalit parties have emerged which have made a major contribution to the transformation in the condition of Dalits in India. And the second point one should emphasize is there is reservation for Dalits, particularly scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, in education and in employment. Two of the critical areas in which social life and change can be brought about. And this is generic throughout Indian states. And some Indian states, for example in the south,
quotas are not fulfilled at all.
Extend reservation.
Oh, okay, I think Satpal's point is...
I think to be fair...
Reservations are on papers as such.
Okay, go ahead, Gurharpal.
To be fair,
we'll give
if we
Satpal
look
a
at the
chance.
data, if we look at the data, there has been a change since independence. It's not been a significant enough a change to bring and uplift the whole of the Dalit community in India, but nonetheless, it would be unfair to say that Dalits are completely unrepresented in Indian public life.
Come on, Gurharpal. No. Be a sociologist or be an academician. You cannot say that. You have to understand and measure changes. You cannot say that there's a change. Change is always a law of nature. So what change you are talking about? Can you tell me one Dalit in judiciary at the highest level? Can you tell me one secretary at the highest level? Can you tell me one minister who can dictate any policies to the Dalits? There is a Dalit minister who out of 18% of the population, there are 10 Brahmin ministers who can monopolize the power.
All right, let's give Gurharpal a chance to come back in on that one.
I think what we have to distinguish is between recruitment and representation, and indeed the placement of individuals in the various levels within the hierarchy and structures of governance. And of course here I recognize that there is institutionalized discrimination in the Indian political system against Dalits as well as against religious minorities like Muslims, Sikhs and Christians. So that is a different issue, but we must get our facts right and not completely throw the baby out with the bathwater and say that there is no representation. I mean, that is quite absurd. Now, going on to the other issue, I think one important point has been missed, namely that in the last decade has been a real boom in the Indian economy, and the main communities that have missed out in this boom are those at the lower rung of the social ladder, the lower caste groups. And this is here where I think the differentiation is coming, and that the acuteness of India's development is most sharply felt by Dalit communities.
Okay.
And it's important that the change that occurs is not simply, recognizes this.
All right, Satpal, to what extent is the economic reform lifting Dalits up? I mean, 62% still illiterate. We're told close to half live under the poverty line.
You see, funds get allocated from the central government and they enact various policies. But the problem is those funds, they don't trickle down into the various states. And you find that there are many examples of where funds have been allocated for the development of scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. And those funds are either not spent or they get misdirected. So there's a lack of political will, and at the state level, I would say, because the centre always says that the funds have been allocated, but the state governments, any implementation of the policy adoptions are with the state government. So there's a ping pong that goes on between the center and the state. But the thing is, those at the center and those at the state, in the states, are belonging to the upper echelons, the dominant castes. So there is no actually political will for the development of the Dalits, and funds get allocated, they don't get spent, or they get misdirected or directed into other areas. And what needs to happen, this political will needs to be there. Otherwise, these activities in terms of violence being faced by the Dalits will continue, and you will get, going back to Rohit Vemula, Rohit Vemula's mother recently said that she doesn't want to see another Rohit Vemula in India. And because look what happened to him. And you see, there's an ongoing harassment, bullying going on all the time, and atrocities. So something has to happen. And one of the things that can happen, there has to be special courts and established to hear complaints, and there has to be exemplary punishments given to those.
Let me just jump in on one point that you said there and take it, if I may, to Vivek.
The media itself.
Do you think this government really has the motivation to help Dalits when it's, it's led by a party that believes firmly in, shall we say, some core Hindu nationalistic ideas and sentiment?
No, actually, you have to see the ideology. As you are asking for the ideology, ideology is that there should be social harmony. They don't want structural changes. They want to maintain the structure, status quoism, and that's why I'm talking about. People were quoting data of atrocities.
Does that include the continued practice of caste system? I mean, some who've worked, like Mr. Pravin Nakamu, worked 29 years for the BJP, and he's quoted as saying the ruling party practiced untouchability within its ranks, giving Dalits separate accommodation at party events, preventing them from serving higher caste officials, etc., etc.
No, I will say untouchability is a very, very meager aspect of the social life of India. Dalits are asking a larger question of self-representation in the institutions of governance production. And that's why I beg to differ from Gurharpal, who was talking about change is taking place. Change is a natural phenomenon. It will take place. But what is the quality of change? Whether it is effective enough to lead structural change, whether Dalits are given enough space and voice to decide the program and policies of the nation. Where are they? That's what I'm asking. Where are they in the government? There is one minister of the scheduled caste who is a empowerment and justice minister, and I have not seen speaking on the atrocities of the Dalits, which are 129 atrocities a day, 5 hours. 5 atrocities per hour.
All right, let me go. We've got about a minute left.
Judiciary.
Let's take that question
judicial?
Let's take that question to Gurharpal. With now, are there perhaps economic reasons why there might be resistance to the rise of Dalits? The majority of the country's 40 million bonded labourers are Dalits. Helping them to rise economically is going to have massive economic and social implications, isn't it?
Yeah, yes, it has, and one should recognise that all citizens of India are of equal value and worth, and that helping this disadvantaged community would add significantly to India's human resources in the long term. So in that sense,
do you think some of the elite see it as against their interest, though, going to cost their businesses if they help these people to rise?
No, not at all. I think there is a sea change, and there is, as Vivek has clearly outlined, that there is institutionalized prejudice. But I think in the long term, all the elites recognize that the uplift of the marginalized communities is, and indeed of religious communities, is crucial to the integrity of the Indian Union.
All right, we'll have to leave it there for now. Let's thank our guests, Gurharpal, Satpal and Vivek. And thank you for watching. You can see the show anytime again by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, head over to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle there is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Sami Zeidan, and the whole team here for now, it's goodbye.